I'm looking forward to talking to Raul Raymundo from the Resurrection Project in Chicago. I'm Mike Loftin. I'm a non-resident fellow at the Urban Institute and the CEO of Homewise, which is a social enterprise in New Mexico that has been working for 30 years to increase access to home ownership. Raul has been doing this too for a long time as the CEO and co-founder of the Resurrection Project over 30 years ago. My understanding, Raul, is that home ownership was one of the first things the Resurrection Project ever took on, and it continues to do that. So maybe we could start by you sharing some of the history of the Resurrection Project and your commitment to home ownership and why you're so committed to home ownership.
Thanks, Mike, for doing this and having me share our thoughts here on home ownership. When we began this organization, we began by looking not just at the problems and needs of the community, but at the assets, the both tangible and non-tangible assets. Yes, there's a lot of tangible assets in communities that have been challenged, such as churches or schools and so forth. But and then of course the non-tangible assets are the people, the culture, the language, the spirit of a community. But one of the key tangible assets where the both the families and the structures come in is on home ownership. It's very important that families that have been struggling for years to make it to the middle class or beyond have an opportunity to build wealth. And for poor working class communities, home ownership is the solution. They don't invest in the stock market, they don't invest in fancy insurance instruments, but if done right, they'll be able to build wealth over time. And in doing so, our message has always been when you buy a home in the community, you're not just buying a piece of property, you're buying part of the community. In other words, you're not just owning a home, you're also becoming owners of the community. And so there's this social aspect as well beyond just becoming a homeowner.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting point that you made. And in a previous interview, we talked to Anthony Simpkins at the Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago, and he made essentially the same point as we know a lot about how homeownership builds family wealth and how important that is because of the wealth gap we have in America. We don't talk as much about what you just talked about, which is the community wealth and how it creates buy-in in the community and investment in the community and helps make neighborhoods better. And you've been doing that in Pilsen and Back of the Yards. Little Village in Chicago for over 30 years now. Talk more about the revitalization work and how you see home ownership fits into that.
Well, home ownership should never be seen just as a bricks and mortar strategy, not just building homes for the sake of building homes, right? It needs to be seen as part of a comprehensive plan for the community to build wealth for itself as well. And the more homeowners there are in a community, the more they will be able to preserve the community, the more they will be able to build on the social fabric of the community and be able to move, if you will, generational wealth to their kids. We built many homes in the early years here at the Resurrection Project, and here we are 25 years later. Those families have built significant wealth and have allowed that wealth to be utilized to send their kids to college, open up businesses, continue to be active members of the community, and so forth. So that's the key. And home ownership is a key component of building a healthier community and building wealth for itself as well.
Right. Well, and you mentioned something that it's way beyond just bricks and mortar, right? It's that we think of housing and we think about you got to build something. And I think I'd love to hear you talk more about, because I know about the Resurrection Project and that you build homes, and we're going to talk about that too, some of your more recent efforts in that, but you also do home buyer education and mortgage lending and down payment assist. Like you look at it in a very comprehensive kind of people-centered way. Maybe you could talk more about the need for that kind of robust delivery system that's multifaceted. It's not just one thing that you do.
Well, absolutely. Our approach is to make sure that families understand what we do is like the full circle approach to becoming a homeowner. And it starts with self-interest of families wanting to become homeowners and then providing them with the tools they need, specifically the education that they need to be able to prepare themselves to become not just homeowners, but sustainable homeowners. And that's also the key. We have a motto here that it says obtain, maintain, and sustain. And it's to be clear, because many families were shortchanged, if you will, leading up to the financial crisis of 2008, because many families did not buy homes the right way. They were lied to, they were misled into buying homes. They did not have the right preparation. And here the crisis came, and a lot of families, particularly families of color, lost tremendous wealth. And so that's very important. And we've been doing that from the get go. Not surprisingly, many of the families that we taught and provided them with financial literacy preparation did not go into foreclosure.
Right.
And the other thing that I often say is that, to build wealth, you have to first stop wealth from being sucked out of the community. And that's making sure that they're financially prepared, because there's still tremendous predatory lending that's going on.
Right.
And if we
Right.
don't teach families the right way to buy a home, then they could get preyed on ongoingly.
Yeah.
And that's very important as part of the
Yeah.
whole vision of building healthier community.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've always thought of it as, I love your thing of obtain, maintain, and
Sustain.
sustain, because it's the sustainability of the long, we're trying to help families get ahead,
Right.
and become more financially secure. So the way I've always thought about it is like, how you buy a home is as important, or maybe even more important than whether you buy a home. You got to buy it in the right way. And so I think that's something that you guys have done, and I know about how resilient Pilsen was during the foreclosure crisis. It was one of the most resilient neighborhoods in Chicago, and I think it's probably a lot to do with the work you've done there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's very important that people look at home ownership again as a wealth building strategy long term. Many of these families that we help to buy homes for have been in the neighborhood for 20 plus years. In fact, we just saw some research done. Still, 70% of the families who bought these homes 20, 25 years ago are still in the neighborhood and building wealth. That's
Wow,
significant.
that
And
is something. That's amazing.
and so when we think about home ownership, we need to be thinking about home ownership for the long term, so that they could rebuild communities, not short term. Um, and that's important for revitalizing communities. It's not a 1 year, 2 year plan and think that things are going to turn around, particularly with the challenges that some of these communities have had. It's going to take time. And I think we need to start thinking about how we plan ahead 5, 10 years, 15 years ahead, and
Yeah.
stop fooling ourselves that we have a magic bullet that communities are going
Right.
to get revitalized in a year or two.
Right. Yeah. No, that's real. Well, on that note, I mean, I know you have a whole new initiative focused in back of the yards, with some new home ownership opportunities. Can you tell us more about what you're doing there?
Yeah, we're excited about this opportunity. Home ownership is a key component of revitalizing community, and we set out to create sort of a new model or a new approach to providing affordability, and also try to build towards scale. And we're in that process of doing that. And so we are, in addition to doing the education, the preparation, getting families involved, we decided to put forward a modular type housing home ownership opportunity. And so the modular type housing is going to allow us to build to scale. So usually, when you build on site, you can probably build 10, maybe 20 homes a year. This modular type approach is going to allow us to, at minimum, if we have orders in, of doing up to 100 a year, and perhaps accelerate the home ownership opportunities
Right.
for the communities where we're looking to build homes for. But you can't do this unless we do what Homewise has been good at, which is building the pipeline, building the demand, making sure that when these homes are built, you have at least three families interested in every one of those homes that is being built.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think that's a really good point, because it's like you have to build both sides of the pipeline, right? A supply
Right.
pipeline, which this that you're doing, and a buyer pipeline. And it's different than some of the like low income rental stuff, where there really is a, if you build it, they will come dynamic sometimes because it's so affordable and people are desperate for housing. You fill it up pretty quickly. But when people are buying a home, they're signing on a 30-year mortgage.
Right.
You gotta make sure they want to buy that home and they're willing to take that risk and make that kind of commitment. It's a different dynamic.
It is, and and the families need to understand what they're getting themselves into. If it's a rental opportunity, often it's short term and often it's limited. And when they're looking into buy a home, they're putting a lot of skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
Time, energy, and eventually resources to invest in this that'll yield social dividends for them, wealth for them, and for the communities as well.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think these are really good insights. It's great to hear from practitioners like you who have been on the ground for a very long time, doing this kind of work. It's a voice that needs to be more prevalent in housing policy discussions, I think.
Let me just say one last thing, and this is I was talking to a colleague of mine, and I was making this example again, the importance of home ownership for working families. That for us, that's the vehicle for families to build wealth while they're sleeping, right?
Right.
Slowly but surely. For the very affluent people, they make a lot of money while they're sleeping because of the stock market.
Right. Yeah, it's the one chance for working class people to actually get that same
Right.
kind of benefit. Well, this is great. Well, we should do this again. I love these kind of conversations. It's great to see you.
Absolutely.
And thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Have a good one.